Family, good morning. It's Kyle Henderson, Bama Football on YouTube, cutting this video right after the news drops about Brian Kelly being fired at LSU. Who do you think gets this job? Thinking about like hot boards, I think a name that's probably always going to be mentioned in a job like this is Lane Kiffin, right? Florida opens, Lane Kiffin. LSU opens, Lane Kiffin. Do you think that Lane Kiffin eventually takes another job, or do you think he stays at Ole Miss? I'm going to talk, about a variety of topics in this video, kind of as you get your day started. I might be doing this periodically, kind of uploading some morning videos before even my 10 a.m. show, kind of like recapping or kind of what we're working on leading to that 10 a.m. live show. But I think when we talk about LSU, things were not right with Brian Kelly over there. And despite him having, I guess somewhat of a moderately good record at LSU. I'm looking at his record right now. At LSU overall, for example, he was 34-14, 19-10 in SEC play. This year, 2-3. I think it was an embarrassing loss against A&M. I think there were some experts out there that felt that this team had enough talent to really make a run in the SEC. I never bought it. I kind of saw Brian Kelly in the same kind of category as like a James Franklin, just that he was in the SEC. So I'm not surprised to see Kelly not have the success at LSU, but I am a little bit surprised that the firing just came, before Halloween. So now you have Florida open, you have LSU open, you have Penn State open. I mean, there's some major jobs that are open out there. I'm curious to see who's on your hot board. So besides Lane Kiffin, what other names kind of make sense? I think a name that Coach Saban was talking about on game day was Clark Lee. Clark Lee's done an amazing job at Vanderbilt, right? And you kind of look to their 7-1 record right now and how they're playing with their quarterback Diego Pavia and how a program has really changed course and managed NIL and the transfer portal really well. He could be a name that could maybe get a call to one of these other programs. I don't know if LSU is a spot. How about like maybe a Brent Key? I've been thinking about Brent Key, another former assistant of Coach Saban who's done an amazing job at Georgia Tech, right? These guys are undefeated. They've played even, some SEC teams really well. I think Georgia last year, right? They took them into overtime, something like that. Brent Key's done a really good job at Georgia Tech, but way better than I thought that he would do. Other guys that might be kind of on the radar or, names, I don't know if it's realistic like a John Gruden. People threw out that name, and does he want to come back to coach? Is he, does a place like LSU? I mean, it's going to be enticing to everybody. You got to think the coach that gets LSU is going to be making what, $11 million, maybe more than that. I mean, Curt Cignetti is getting 11.6 at Indiana. LSU, it can pay top tier dollar for their coach. How about a do you think maybe a Marcus Freeman, would he leave Notre Dame? Can you imagine if Notre Dame lost 2 coaches to LSU? I don't think that'll happen. How about like some other names that are maybe synonymous with LSU, like a Jimbo Fisher? Does he come back? What about big Ed Orgeron? You think maybe he comes back as well? I have no idea. I think it'd be interesting to see who gets the next spot for LSU because they're right next to Alabama. This is a program that is supposed to be top tier. They haven't been top tier, and I don't even know who the intern coach is going to be, right? So this is fluid. We'll continue to track it. I think it is interesting and major news in college football. All right, let's talk about the AP Top 25. I'll kind of scroll through some of my slides that I had over here on the right. This is kind of the morning show, like this 4 a.m. or whenever it's uploaded. It won't be that dressed up compared to some of my other shows. It'll kind of be, more audio than a whole show put together. So I appreciate you guys giving me grace on that. But I do want to talk about the AP and the coaches poll, what we're looking at right here, right? And we'll talk more about this during our 10 a.m. show. So you have Ohio State at the number 1 spot. They were open this week, and they are 7-0 on the season. I think a stat line that does stand out to me about Ohio State is the fact that they have only allowed 41 points this season. Now, they don't have the strongest resume in teams they beat. For example, they beat ranked Illinois, and they beat ranked Texas when Texas was number 1. So not a lot to pump your chest about, but I think collectively we all agree, like, this team was there last year. This team has quality players this year. Julian Sain, former Alabama quarterback, now leading Ohio State. Well, he was here just for a little while. They got some very dangerous weapons on offense. And look, their defense is great. So Ohio State, the number 1 spot. And then you go to Indiana. This team got a lot of kind of movement in the rankings when they beat Illinois, right? They put 63 points on Illinois, who at that point was ranked number 9. I never thought Illinois was even that good to begin with. I will say, though, I've watched Indiana. They're a good football team. They have a lot of good defensive players. They're really fast to the ball. Quarterback Fernando Mendoza, I think he has like 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions or something like that. So they got guys. They got weapons. Cignetti's done a great job over there kind of transforming them. And this is a team that's won a lot of games against unranked opponents. Now, they're undefeated, right? And they beat up on UCLA, but I think the schedule is not comparable to what the teams in the SEC have had to face on a weekly basis. More on that in just a minute. Texas A&M, man, I thought that Saturday LSU might give them maybe a little bit better of a game, maybe even win. I think they said, wow, maybe LSU wins that game. Boy, was I wrong. Yo, Texas A&M sliced through these guys, it wasn't close. I mean, you know what was impressive for Texas A&M was the fact that Marcel Reed, their quarterback, yo, he really stood out. That guy is fast. He might be the fastest quarterback in the SEC. You know, if Alabama and A&M match up, that guy's a problem. He's going to be a problem for everybody. So I saw that he's kind of moving up in the Heisman. Good for him because I don't think people have been talking about him. Casey Concepcion. Yo, remember he almost came over here? That guy's a menace. He returned that punt, and you could see Brian Kelly's heartbreak. Seriously, 100%. That guy is fast. He's a weapon. He's dynamic. A&M has a lot of components. You know what's interesting about A&M, too, is they have second-year head football coach Mike Elko, right? So he's doing a really great job. I'm sure he'd be up there with Coach Kalen DeBoer in terms of, like, the coach of the year, nominations and that sort of stuff at the back end of the year. So A&M 8-0 and really a favorable schedule kind of going on the back end. I'll bring it up on this other side. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I think I'll read it off. But A&M's remaining games, they have a game against Missouri. Now, as you know, Bo Pribula is out for the year with the foot injury. You also have South Carolina. Well, South Carolina is a lot better than their record, right? You have Stanford and Texas. So those are favorable games coming up for A&M. I would imagine they probably are 12-0 and standing, in Athens. I'm sorry, standing in Atlanta to play in the SEC title game. So after that, you have Alabama. And the channel's Alabama focus clearly. I actually left and woke up on Sunday feeling that this was an amazing victory for Alabama. If you're able to win a game like that when everything is going against you, hey, that says a lot about your team. That says a lot about the leadership. And this team has gone through adversity, whether it's like, off the field stuff with Coach Kalen DeBoer. He's not the guy and all this sort of stuff. And after that Florida State game, a lot of people threw this team under the bus and felt like this team could, not get it done and not be where they are right now at this point in time, a top 5 team in the country. They didn't play their best game, but they still won. I talk about Ty Simpson's performance, only 56%, 1 of 9 on deep passes. I'm like, does Alabama have a deep ball game? Can Alabama run the football? They only had 72 yards. They're able to win, right? And they found a way to win, and hats off to Alabama defensive coordinator Kane Womack. This team did an amazing job. There's an interesting stat that I wanted to read off. I posted it on Facebook. Trailing 22-14 with 10 minutes remaining in the final quarter, Alabama's defense surrendered just 32 total points and outgained the Gamecocks 117-2 while outscoring them 15-0 the rest of the way. Another interesting point that I wanted to highlight, I'll read a couple stats from University of Alabama. First highlighting Jeremy Bernard. Jeremy Bernard contributed both 1 receiving and 1 rushing score in the win, making the second game this season where the senior receiver has found the end zone through the air and on the ground. Jeremy Bernard was targeted 14 times in this game. He only came up with 5 receptions. Ryan Grubb has been able to effectively utilize Jeremy Bernard like Kyle Shanahan used to utilize Deebo Samuel. I love saying that because that's exactly what's happening. Has him at running back. has him at wide receiver, has him at quarterback or at Wildcat. So love to see it. I've been very open, but I don't want to see any more crispy package. I think Caden Proctor needs to stay at tackle. That was fun, but you can't go forward if you don't have Proctor playing the rest of the way, right? Like, he's too important. Daniel Hill had 76 yards receiving, which was amazing, including 41-yard. That was kind of his longest. 250 pounds running at you. That's who you want running the football, right? And I don't think, you sell on Jam. I really don't. He had a really nice run in this game. He had a really nice run in the fourth quarter. His big run in the opening half was because of the fact that, it was negated because of a holding call. So don't sell on Jam. I think that it's more the offensive line and kind of some of the scheming on Ryan Grupp. I don't think there's anything wrong with the running backs. That's a whole nother video, though. I do want to highlight one more player on Alabama's team, Blake Dowd, the punter. He produced his best game for the Tide with 5 punts for 277 yards, averaging 55.4 per punt, while above his season average of 40 yards per punt. So he even had a kick that went 60 yards, right? So super impressive for the kicker for Alabama, the punter, rather. Georgia is sitting at 6-1 on the season, and I've been talking about kind of some of these parameters that the SEC could have maybe 4 teams. Let's see, one team, A&M, if they finish out 12-0, and then 3 other teams that finish out 11-1 on the season, maybe even 4 if Vanderbilt can get it done. So when you talk about Georgia football, a team that a lot of people aren't talking about, I know Coach Saban is. Coach Saban said that he wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the teams, there at the end for the SEC championship. Now Alabama has the tiebreaker over them head-to-head. They play Florida, Mississippi State, Texas, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is undefeated, as we discussed. That was a very entertaining game last year. 2 former Saban assistants, right? Georgia's got a good football team. Now, I think that what Georgia's lacking is a high-caliber quarterback. They just haven't had a quarterback that was just overly dynamic. I don't know what it is, but that just hasn't been the case for the Bulldogs. Plus, I don't think they have, elite wide receivers. Now, Zachariah Branch is the guy, but he's kind of the only guy. You know what I'm saying? It's been something that has stood out to me the last several years. But it looks like the schedule is set up for Georgia to potentially make a real run at being 11-1, which would be an amazing feat for Coach Kirby Smart and his crew. We talk next about Oregon. Oregon is 7-1 in the season. Look, I still don't know how good this football team is. I mean, their only loss is to Indiana, and the other teams that they've beaten on the schedule: Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, Oregon, Penn State. They went into overtime with Penn State, and as you've seen, Penn State completely fell off the rail. They fired their coach. Other wins include Rutgers and Wisconsin. So Oregon, they're kind of just there because they're there, but is this team kind of a contender, a pretender? I don't know. We respect Dan Lanning, so maybe that's why we keep them in there. They're 7-1, right? The rest of the way, Oregon plays Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and Washington. So this is a team that finished out 11-1 and is kind of just automatically in the playoffs, and they don't have to play in the conference championship game. So they enter fresh, they enter healthy. They're probably arguing for a top 4 spot, which I don't think they'll get because their schedule. However, 11-1 probably at the end of the season. All right, Georgia Tech is number 7. This is a team that I've watched them several times, and you look at their quarterback play, right? Haynes King, man, if you haven't seen this guy play, this guy is absolutely a menace, okay? You look at some of his stats, like, for example, in this last game against Syracuse, he had 304 yards passing, 91 yards rushing. The game before, 205 passing, 120 rushing. He's a monster, right? He's a bigger quarterback that can do a lot of dynamic things. They play NC State, Boston College, Pittsburgh, and then Georgia on the back end. So Georgia Tech right now, top in ACC. It's kind of paved their way to get into the ACC championship game. There's a couple teams up at the top of the ACC, conference that could maybe that they could play in the ACC championship game. For example, let me get to it real quick on this side. I'm just reading it off. You got Georgia Tech, they're 5-0 in conference play. Virginia's 4-0. Pittsburgh's 4-1. Louisville's 3-1. And you're like, well, where's Miami? Well, Miami lost, and Miami has only played 3 conference games. So because Miami lost to Louisville, this could be interesting to see how many teams get in from the ACC. If Georgia Tech wins out and maybe Virginia, I would suspect that it's just Georgia Tech that gets in and then Miami without playing in the championship game, if that makes sense. Kind of remember when Bama got in a couple years ago without playing in the conference championship? Something like that. So Georgia Tech doing a great job, and I think that's why Brent Key's name will be up there. And that quarterback, I'm telling you, here's the problem. All right, Ole Miss, this football team kind of flying under the radar as well. And Lane Kiffin's going to be mentioned for every single job that opens. It's just that's something that is going to happen. And I say this about Lane Kiffin. I'll try to read off Lane Kiffin versus top 25. While we love Lane Kiffin in this ecosystem because, and I've said this before, because he's like the son of Saban. Not like literally, but, he's like Saban. He's funny, good-looking dude, presents himself well, great offensive-minded coach, even talks like coach. He's Saban. But against top 25 teams is not that impressive. 11-24. His numbers aren't much better than like a James Franklin. But I think you were just like, he's Lane Kiffin. Him and Saban have history, so he's the guy. Look, Ole Miss, they don't win a lot of big games. Lane Kiffin's teams, they just don't. They had an opportunity to beat Georgia. They couldn't. The times, when he went head-to-head against Saban, he lost those games. I like the guy. I think he's absolutely hilarious. But it looks like Ole Miss will have an opportunity to, maybe prove me wrong. And their schedule suits up well for them to finish out 11-1, right? South Carolina up next. Well, that team's tough. Citadel, Florida, and then Mississippi State. So maybe we see Lane with 11-1 getting to the playoffs. And let me ask you, do you think inside the comment box that Lane stays at Ole Miss, or do you think he explores other options? I don't know. All right, let's talk about Miami real quick. The Miami Hurricanes is kind of an interesting team because this team, I think at one point when I watched them early on the season, I was like, holy cow, this is the Miami that, people are talking about. Carson Beck is like the truth. And then I watched them against Louisville, and I was like, what's happening, right? They had a bounce-back game where they beat Stanford. That was yesterday. They won by a score of 42-7. Carson Beck, 189 yards, kind of got back on track. The way that Miami's schedule looks the rest of the way, Syracuse, they have NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh. Those are manageable games, I think, for Miami. But again, they lost to Louisville, so maybe Carson Beck has a slip-up or a relapse of who he was last year. Who knows? But Miami, and that is it Malachi Toney, their receiver? Oh, my goodness. That guy he might be one of the most dangerous players in college football, period, right? Okay. Let's get to BYU real quick, and then we'll move on topics. BYU football, right? BYU, on the coaches poll, they're ranked 10. Now, I think Vanderbilt is ahead of them in the AP poll, but just let's talk about this real quick. So BYU, this team is 10, 11, wherever you want to look at them, and number one in the Big 12. They've beaten literally nobody. They beaten one ranked team. They beat Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina, Colorado, West Virginia, Arizona, Utah in overtime, and Arizona in double overtime, Utah by a field goal, and they had to come from behind to beat Iowa State. This team, they're clearly having an amazing season, but what would their record be if they played in the SEC? Let me ask you this: would BYU beat Mississippi State? I'm dead serious. Would they? I don't know. So BYU right now, the rest of their schedule, they probably lose to Texas A&M this week going to Lubbock. Maybe not, because Texas Tech's quarterback, I think, is out now the season. So they got Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati. That'd be a good game. And then you have Central Florida there on the back end for BYU. There is Alabama now goes into its open week, right? And I think when you look to this football team overall, it's all going to revolve around the play of Ty. These are my ratings, for the guys against South Carolina. I gave him a 6.8. He didn't have his best game, but I think collectively what Ty Simpson has done this year is Heisman worthy. It's been super impressive to see him operate this offense. It's been amazing to see kind of his journey, and sometimes the cake just isn't baked until it's baked, right? He's done an amazing job. 2,100 yards in the season, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception, just an incredible touchdown to interception ratio. And while he didn't have his best game, against South Carolina, he didn't turn the football over, right? He threw 2 touchdowns, and he led his team when it mattered most, 14 play drive, 79 yards, 757, and Alabama was able to get into the end zone. So this guy has been red hot. He's a leader, and really everything that you want as a Alabama quarterback, right? I mean, he's easy to like because he's a leader. And I was listening to one of the quotes that he told the team reporters following the game. He's like, I have never had so much trust in me from the guys. Like, that locker room trusts him 1,000,000%. And I think as a fan, you feel the same way, right? You understand that Ty Simpson has the capability to win big games, right? Georgia. He has the ability to come from behind, right? This game, what we saw. He has the ability to bounce back in performances where he didn't have the best game, the Florida State game. You look to how he's been able to distribute the football to Jerry Bernard, Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton, Lottie Brooks, who are some other? We got Rico Scott. He's probably the 5th wide receiver. I even saw some Derek Meadows in this last game. But my point is, he's been able to distribute the football. Oh, we can't forget Josh Cuevas. Josh Cuevas he's one of the better tight ends that Alabama's had in quite some time. Happy to see it. So he's been doing amazing, and it's going to ride on him because he's the quarterback. But I do have to say, as we kind of talk about this Alabama defense, wow, hats off to these guys because they have been going up against some stiff competition. I know that South Carolina was number 127 and all. I don't care. That Lenora Sellers is a problem. 240 pounds of just man. He was a problem. And these guys did a really great job of stopping South Carolina, not once but twice, on long drives, 14, 15 plays, and holding them to field goals. As the offense kind of, struggled to find itself, the defense. And I want to say this kind of in closing. The plays this year, kind of the best plays of the season have come from the defensive side of the ball. Think about this. Against Georgia, 4th and 1, need a big play. All right, you got you. LT Overton comes up with a big stop, him and Deontay Lawson. The next week, right, you go into a game against Vanderbilt. You need an interception. Diego Pavia is driving. Boom, you got you. Keon Sapp. Next game, you need a defensive stop on special teams. Draylon Washington comes up with a stop. Boom. Next game, Tennessee's driving down, trying to take some momentum. Boom, 98-yard interception for a touchdown. This game, it's tied. South Carolina's trying to get something going so they can win the game with the field goal or whatever. Boom, strip by your captain and fumble recovery by your other captain, which allows Alabama to score a touchdown. So the defense has kind of had this bend but break identity form. They're very opportunistic. Ball bounces up. They'll catch it. They'll return it for a touchdown. These guys are good. They're very talented. And I just want to kind of give a little bit of credit to the Alabama defense because Kane Womack, he's had his hands full facing some elite offenses in the SEC and some great quarterbacks. And it don't stop. Job's not done because you have LSU, and they'll be hungry. Any team that fires their coach, they come back super hungry. It's crazy. It's the weirdest thing. Think about like Arkansas. They're playing much better, right? That's another job that's open. So then you have Oklahoma and John Mateer, and that would be a challenging game, right? He should be much more healthy at that point in time. And then you have Eastern Illinois, got to lock in and take care of all the outside noise and make sure everybody's healthy in a game like that. And then you go to Auburn for the haunted trip to the barn. So a lot of football left. It's great to see where Alabama is right now. This bye week comes at a perfect time. So you got to stay locked in, stay dialed in, and I hope you've enjoyed this morning video right here on Bama Football on YouTube as you get your day started. Sorry, I've been talking a lot. I got a little tongue-tied, but I made it through the video pretty well, right? We're at 23 minutes. I need to go to bed. I love you, fam. Thanks for following me as always. I really appreciate you. And if you want to become a fan funder or drop a super chat or whatever, I really appreciate it on the lives. Otherwise, just drop inside the comment box. But I need to go to bed. I need rest. I love you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Kyle Henderson, Bama Football on YouTube. What an eventful weekend. Stay where your feet are at. And we'll catch you soon right here on Bama Football on YouTube. See you, fam.